from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased. Joining me from the UK, the CTO of Robin AI, Carina Negreanu. Carina, thank you very, very much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it. Can be very busy for a CTO like yourself, and thank you for making it. The way I love to do it, Carina, as I was explaining to you before, we started recording, I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit more about you, your background, your journey, what brought you up here to Robin AI, and then of course we're gonna start the discussion from there. Teaser for the audience: we're gonna talk a lot about legal tech, but of course before that, let's know more about you. So the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm Carina, and as Mehmet was saying, I'm the CTO at Robin AI. I have a background in machine learning, and before taking the CTO role, I was the VP of AI. Before Robin, I used to be a principal research manager in Microsoft Research, where I did a lot of very cool stuff around formula generation and code generation, in particular for Excel. And before that, I used to be a PhD student in physics, where I studied Einstein's general relativity systems. So quite a journey for me to get into legal tech, but it's a really hot place to be right now, especially as the machine learning approaches that we have are really relevant today.
Great, and thank you again, Karina, for being here with me today. Legal tech, for some people it might look like something boring. It might look something, it's like a rigid domain, I would say, of expertise. What excited you and let you shift gears and come and join Robin AI?
Yeah, I think I actually had the same question when I started talking to Richard about joining his company. And one of the things that's really interesting for me is that with legal tech, the space in which you can make errors is really small. So the users have a high expectation that you write a lot. And even today with our best models, we do see quite frequent errors in their judgment, in their reasoning. And we basically have to build tools that support users to verify those kind of flows so they can have confidence in the results that we show them. And that's the same kind of world space and world perspective that I had when I was working on Excel. So the transition, even though the domain is quite different, it's the same kind of conceptual space, which made it really exciting for me because I think there is a lot of space to innovate the legal sector.
Great. Karina, one thing which always I'm curious to know about, when I talk to especially CTOs, and this is the CTO show, although like I tell people I don't only speak to CTOs, I talk like almost to all the C-suite of any company and operators as well. But um, every company have developed something to solve a specific problem, right? Which have a business impact solving it. I would love to hear from you a little bit more about like how the tech is solving, problems for customers of Robin AI. Like if you can give me a little bit more background about the kind of problems that, um, organizations would be facing or people would be facing and how you are solving this with tech, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. So at Robin AI, our core mission is to make contracts simpler. And this is because our main sector that we're targeting are better enterprise lawyers, so in-house lawyers that have very high volumes of work they have to do. And some of it is quite repetitive. And what Robin tries to position itself as a market leader in terms of giving those folks the support they need to basically achieve more in their day-to-day. Examples of workflows that we are tackling are contract review. So, for example, when a lawyer receives a request to review a contract and update it based on playbook, we automatically do that for them. First pass, second pass markups. These are all very time consuming and laborious pieces of work. And Robin's goal is to create for them the resources they need to be able to not start from scratch, but more verify the outputs of a model that produces their work for them. That's one example of a flow. There are other flows. For example, you have a large volume of contracts and you want to know across them what is the expiration day or enforcement date for a certain clause across all of them. An example that'll be very time consuming, as you can imagine, searching for all of them. So we have built a technology that figures out how to create tables that sources this information for them with citations so they can easily verify. And also it tries to help them on the path to verification by producing levels of different confidence, suggesting places where they might want to look further. So we are basically trying to not just produce results for users that they can then have to verify at a very large scale, but support them on their journey to do a better job in this space. Another example, I think I can talk forever, but
No, please.
another example would be when people want to do chat across verified resources. So for instance, maybe one of your colleagues asks you, relevant to my, I don't know, 50, 70, 100 contracts, what does it mean if the law in Delaware changed? Now,
Mm.
that's quite a complex task usually because folks have to figure out what the relevant law in Delaware would be. You have to find out where out of this massive amount of contracts that applies or doesn't. And Robert has a multi-contract system that understands your data across your whole repository. And for that to make it a lot more easy to navigate and understand the outputs, we have built something that we call the Legal Intelligence Platform that we launched last July.
Now, one thing when it comes especially to legal, Karina, and this is, because of your AI background also, so there are some overlapping here. What I hear sometimes is, and you know it better than me, you're the expert. So we talk about accuracy, we talk about bias. Now, when we put this into a legal workflow, right? So, how we can make sure that, you know, powering the whole processes actually that you just mentioned is still, in compliance with what legal in general would accept, because some of the models, we see people, they say that the model is biased, or the model is maybe because again, if you train it the way that you have the data and you give the
Mhm.
data, and some people still they say, yeah, but as training the data, who is controlling the data itself, that it's not biased. So how do you solve this in Robin AI?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's a very hard topic, obviously. Um, so first off, I am of the mindset that it's all about making it easy for people to verify and setting the right expectations when you produce a tool. The tool is not meant to replace you. The tool is meant to enhance your workflow. So for example, if with contract review, when you have a playbook that you want to apply to a contract, the model can do a good job up to a point. And that speeds you up a lot, that gives you time to focus on other things that are important. But it's really important that we provide you the tool after that that can help you verify the answers and the changes that the model has produced. So it's about supporting the user on their journey and thinking about verification as the first step in any kind of product that you build. I think it's very unrealistic to believe that we're always going to get things right. So starting from the idea that you are not going to,
Yeah.
but just making it easy for folks is really important. In terms of model training, at Robin, we are in a very fortunate position that we are kind of like a two-dimensional business in the sense that we have our software sales and software component, but also we have a managed service that uses our software to basically do all of these markups and reviews. And all of the data and all of their insights in how they use the software are they're fed back into our models. So we have a constant flow of feedback from them, and the data that they produce is really helpful for us at testing and training. And that is basically data that we have a lot more information about, and we can guarantee some levels of quality and de-bias because it's all something that we can control in-house.
Right. Do you work, Karina, with maybe lawyers or legal experts also to make sure, about the quality of the results, or maybe even to enhance your models?
Yeah, exactly. So this is the managed services piece is an example of that. So we have lawyers in the company in kind of two different places. One of them is the managed services side. We have like a significant team of lawyers that are basically doing these markups together with our AI. And then we have a legal engineering team within my organization that create data sets for training, evaluation, and constantly monitoring what's happening under the hood. So we spend a lot of time building the system such that we can collect the information we need to make a judgment if something goes wrong. So, for example, there are different parts of our system where we depend on models from different providers. And then sometimes, something happens. Maybe they have some downtime, maybe there's like an underlying change that we weren't expecting. Our job as folks who build companies like Robin is to make sure that we can transparently inform our customers quickly if there's any performance degradation, and for us to learn from it and guard against it. So that's a lot of the work that my team has been doing in the last year.
Great. Another maybe somehow a parallel topic, and this is something important to discuss, I believe, is about building versus buying, especially in
Mhm,
enterprise, right? So I remember, when I used years and years ago, I was one of the technology team. Not I'm not the decision maker, but I used to sit in the room, and even this is before AI or anything else. So always, we had this discussion: should we go buy? Should we build? Now, when it comes to AI, we talk about something major, something that affect the business, something that can make it or break it.
mhm.
Um, what's your point of view on this, and what's really the trade-off you see when making that decision?
Yeah, so I think it's quite a nuanced problem. But for instance, like the way I think about it for my team and Robin itself, for instance, I am not going to build my own AI that's going to support my team to code better, right? Like that is a no-brainer. There are some very good companies out there that do that, so I'm going to trust them. And it's the same way I think about others buying Robin. It's about figuring out a provider that they trust, a provider that they can work with. So, for instance, if there's a problem, they can escalate quickly. Some jobs are bigger than others. So, for example, how many people did it take you to build something that's custom built for you, and how are you going to support it long term? So, for example, especially in this era of AI, models change all the time. For
Hmm.
your task, are you reaching the performance that you want today? Or if not, then you probably should go for something that's a provider that can, constantly update their models and be always on the hook for that to basically deliver you better performance. So it's interesting. I think with the new developments of the AI, the balance between buy versus build has changed quite a bit. On one hand, you can build easier in many ways. On the other hand, maintaining becomes a lot more difficult because the solutions are a lot more dynamic. So the conversation I usually have with potential customers and prospects is, what is the confidence in that their task is basically staying quite constant or flat? Like, say they have to review always thousands of NDAs, and that's not changing. How do current models or the box models perform for them? Because we don't want them to be disappointed that they're gonna already have like 99% by doing something simple themselves, and basically figuring out what it would take for them to build something versus purchasing the software that we have. I think it's about having these honest conversations because otherwise everyone's going to get disappointed in the long run.
And I agree with you because, the question is, and working as a technology consultant as well, many times, on many occasions, and on in different verticals, in different sizes of companies, what I have seen is that someone decided to build an in-house solution, regardless of what solution is, and to figure out that when the team that built that, of course they tried to do some documentation, but because no one was able to understand the core architecture, there are like some areas and aspects which no one was able to understand after this team who built that left, so they get
Mhm.
stuck. And the problem is, shifting becomes also like harder. So it's like you are in a situation where you don't know where to do, and maybe the decision maker, whether it's a CTO, CIO, whoever is in response, have to take the hard call. So I can
Mhm.
pretty much relate to what you mentioned. But now in this era of AI also, Karina, and let's focus on AI systems in general. So you can imagine, and I have a lot of friends, I call them friends because I know them for a long time, decision makers, their biggest complaint, I would say now, that it became a very noisy market. Everyone comes and say, hey, like, we have the ultimate, whatever you want to call it, and they said, okay, we are having kind of challenges, let's call them this way, in evaluating the vendor's credibility from, again, your perspective, with whatever you're doing now, and of course your long your long experience. How do you evaluate vendor credibility, especially in this times where everyone can say, hey, like, I've developed an LLM, I did this, I did that.
I think it depends a bit on the vertical that you're targeting. So, for instance, like two kind of like different perspectives. For
Sure.
legal, for instance, I think what matters a lot is to make the uh, inclusion of the software a success, which is not just about the software being a good product, because, maybe some people would argue that the difference between a lot of software solutions is not as big as you're saying, or that everyone says that they're doing perfectly. But the user journey and the support and having the people both in house and within the vendor that you're trying to purchase from is really important because they have to be someone who's there with you on the journey to make sure that adoption is successful. Um, that kind of leads into the credibility parts, but I think it's a part that a lot of people don't talk that much about. And I think it's a shame because looking at adoption rates of AI in companies is really low if you actually read the recent studies. And my personal belief that a lot of that is because the adoption part is also an afterthought. So it has to be a vendor that can basically take you on the journey, and that should come as part of the credibility. Now, there are other cases like, say, code generation, which is one of my favorite pieces. Is so something I used to work on before, where basically the type of users that buy a solution like Cursor, for instance, they are very much aware and they know how to self-adopt it. It is very much a very different space. So I think that in that case, basically having something like self-serve makes things a lot easier. It's very much market dependent as far as I'm concerned. But in general, if you're an enterprise and are looking for a solution where, you're the folks that are using the solution and you want to make them power users, because otherwise, why would you make the adoption? They need to be the ones that are on this journey, and you have to figure out what that means for them and ask those questions to all the vendors that you're considering.
Great point, Karina. And just a question that came to my mind now. Do you think also this has, of course, like, we need to do our due diligence, let's say, on any vendor, regardless of the solution in any vertical? Because you mentioned something about adoption. Do you think also the expectation that we, as, and I'm saying we here as the other side of the table, we the enterprise, we the decision makers, uh defining properly what we need to achieve or what we want to achieve, how much this is also important. Because I can't, for example, and let's take legal tech here, like maybe I'm a legal firm, right? And or any other organization that have a legal department probably, and I'm relying on contracts, and I'm relying on a lot of things related to legal. So I can't come to you today and with something which even not achievable, right, with the current technology, and come and tell you, hey, Karina, you know what, I don't think your company is capable. Or like on the other side, I come to you with almost no requirements, and I keep telling you, hey, Karina, I don't think you guys are able to fulfill my requirements. But when you go and dig more, you find out that actually these guys, they don't have requirement, or maybe they have misunderstanding of the technology. So here, what I want to ask Karina, also the importance of your role from vendor perspective in helping customers to really set the right criteria for selection regardless of what the technology is. How important you see this, like to have someone on their side to set the right expectation and not just start to evaluate different vendors and providers without like solid, I would say, background. So I like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental piece to support people in understanding what they actually need and what technology can do for them. So, for example, we are seeing under a lot of companies that are doing POCs, and that's really good. And some of them
Hmm.
are like very well thought out. But even in those processes, sometimes we find that asking the right question makes them think totally differently about, say, their usage or the needs. So I think it's kind of like a shared responsibility between vendors and adopters to basically figure out what is the right solution given what is the need. Usually, we have very deep conversations at the beginning to like discovery calls to try and support folks on their journey to understand what they need AI for. And they're usually really telling things from like what integrations they actually need to even use cases. So, for example, say they have a use case in mind that would unblock their business, they have like a very prescriptive way they think that use case can be solved because that's the way it has been done. And they think of AI as a replacement for a certain component in the flow. But actually, you can actually change your flow entirely because X, Y, and Z is happening in the new technology. So I think solving that understanding gap is the most important piece here. And this just requires a lot of time spent with customers and potential prospects.
Right. Now, another thing, Karina, which I'm sure like you're seeing a lot, and of course you saw it a lot before, related to the adoption. Um, do you think sometimes, as technology leaders who are sitting in the decision maker chair, they're talking to someone like you, I mean, to Robin AI, or maybe from another perspective, maybe talking to another AI provider for another use case, and they are genuine, they understand what they're saying. But do you think sometimes the failure of adoption comes from setting wrong expectation within the organization itself? Do you think because it's like fear from people, from AI? And I'm repeating this question recently with all my guests, is because I started to spot something which is a little bit alarming. Um, so people comes and think one of two ways. So they think AI is the solution for every single problem in the organization, or they think AI is gonna bring all the problems to their organization because they say, okay, it's gonna make my employees worried. They're gonna feel that they will lose their jobs. It will hallucinate. It will. Right. So what's missing here from your perspective? Why the slow adoption also is happening? Beside, of course, the few points that you mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so first there's a knowledge gap. So between, the people who build the technology and the people who use the technology. And I think that is something that we need to be a lot more mindful of going forward as technology builders, because I think that unless people see quick wins very early, it's very hard to convince them to change their flow. It's also like, say that they have 10 use cases of your solution and they run the first two and they're great. They run the third one, it's not great. They run the fourth one, it's okay. But by this time, they have actually invested a lot of time in basically building the knowledge to use your tool. That kind of invested time has to basically be worth it. So things like making a good first impression in the using journey, making sure they have the support they need, and sometimes people just don't have that. Making sure that the incentives are aligned in corporations where it's okay to maybe be a bit slower in the first week to learn how to use a tool because we have confidence that then that time is going to be picked up again. So I think it's all about like three main components here. But I also think that technology builders should work more closely with the business side of potential clients to make sure that early on they have the right information to make a good decision quick. The last thing you want to do is have like long processes that keep dragging or like POCs that take months and months and just like
Hmm.
drain your teams. And then, no one then wants to use it. They have lost all that energy anyway. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned about the POCs that keep dragging, and I think this was happening all the time, even before AI. But AI like overcomplicated things in a sense that, yeah, because people push back a lot to your point. But I'm big believer, like similar to many breakthroughs that happened in tech. So once the organizations and people, of course, within these organizations who adopted the technology, and they started to see the results, this is where the mass will come. And I think we are still early days. I'm aware of this. And I don't have a time frame, but I would say like very soon we're gonna start to see the organization who adopted AI start to see like massive results, whether it's like saving time, saving money, enhancing customer experience, and then the rest will say, "Oh, okay, we don't need to now miss the train, and let's jump on and try to go and do this." So it resonates with what I'm seeing also in the market. Now, let's talk a little bit about and of course, like you were at Microsoft before, and it's like their terms, kind of co-pilot, right? So um but I'm hearing the co-pilot in not also only the Microsoft term, but as co-worker, like a co-colleague, AI as a colleague. How do you see the future of AI co-pilots in the legal industry, and in the field of contracts and negotiation, yeah, and maybe even issuing purchase orders, or maybe like signing memorandum of understanding. So how you see AI evolving in that space, in the co-pilot sense?
So just to clarify, by Copilot, you mean a chat assistant?
Like, okay, this is my issues now, because people get angry on me. So if I call it a chatbot, no, it's not a chatbot. So what I mean here by copilot, yeah, like the interface can be chat, can be voice, can be anything,
Okay.
but the kind of, you know, uh, if you want to, yeah, I know some people will be pissed off. The agentic one, the one that can go and work by
Mm-hmm.
itself, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, sure. Um, yeah, so I think there are several directions here that are probably going to happen quite simultaneously, really, because I think different companies have different perspectives of what to invest in first.
Right.
First off is what we're seeing at the moment. There's a lot of effort, and Robin has put a lot of effort into this as well, into trying to create a conversational agent that basically can support you to answer questions, so that research is being sped up in the legal world, which used to be a very big bottleneck. There are these agents that help you draft documents and that help you review documents, and they are already like, they're getting there in terms of capability. It used to be until like, I don't know, 6, 9 months ago, it used to be quite a difficult space, but now with the evolution of models, it has improved a lot. There are now starting to see workflow agents. So, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, case I help you do a job end to end. And I think that's still very early, but we like big announcements, from loads of different companies now who are building all these workflows. I think that space is also translating into legal quite quickly. Having basically connectivity across your applications, your like email accounts, your SharePoints, your CLMs, and so on, I think is really important. And we are starting to see that happening in the legal space a lot. Obviously, it's an uphill battle because everyone has a different CLM, everyone has different providers. Connecting everything is quite consuming, but we are basically getting to a point where we can have information flow from multiple sources to support lawyers to have like a very complete view of their world. So I think that's like one of the main things that's happening as an innovation right now in the field. Going forward, I think we're basically going to see a lot more assistance at the level of things like, if you want to file something, if you want to fill in a form, if you want to do things that are very specific for the legal long-term process, I think we're going to see more automations at that point. But really, in the legal flow, I think it's kind of there are two different, well, there are many different personas, but some of them are all about singularity, like things like they have to work on a complex contract in one go, and that's the thing that's taking a lot of time, versus scale. So, for instance, they have to create an NDA for like 1,000 people. I think my expectation is that the copilots agents are going to be specialized for these kind of flows specifically. So there's going to be a very big differentiator in the market that tackle one or the other in the long run.
Yeah, and to your point, if you allow me, Karina, like I can give something, which I have seen, and I'm keep seeing on daily basis. Uh, to your point, the NDAs, right? So many times, two companies they decide to start discussing any type of discussion. It might be maybe a starting of merger and acquisition, or maybe it's like just they want to do partnership. And the first thing, okay, send me your NDA. And I've seen this NDA going back and forward, for at least 2 weeks. When it comes to master service agreements, especially like when companies they are like doing like more kind of providing service, and I think similar to what Robin AI might be also offering. So this is where the nightmare starts also as well. Like it goes weeks and weeks, and the biggest one is like kind of master partnership agreement, I call them, where two companies are trying to agree that maybe you can resell my product or service in a certain region, or
Mhm.
who takes the liability. And sometimes I sit down and think, oh my god, like if there was a machine that understand the law, and I can understand like cross countries and cross borders is hard, but I'm sure, we can feed a machine all the laws of, let's say, the UK, where you are now, Karina, and I can feed a machine all the laws of the UAE, United Arab Emirates, where I am now. And then, they can go and take, and make, at least they will not take the final decision, but they can remove the frictions that we see usually, especially because it's asymmetric, or asynchronous communication, because you need someone to come later and sit down and do it. I predicted something which not related to legal. I predicted something 2017. Still the AI bubble. I mean, the AI existed, as you know, before. But I mean, I predicted that at some stage, especially in software sales, that a machine will be able to talk to a machine to define success criteria for POCs and negotiate the pricing. And I was right. Like, of course, we didn't reach that 100%, but now machines we started to see that they are talking to each others. But yeah, to your point, very, very, you know. Valid and accurate, I would say. Now, another point, and talking about different geographies, sometimes like different companies, and especially with the agent, and like having an AI assistant that might need to interact with another AI assistant. How much important here to think ahead about interoperability, which means like, and this is whether, like, again, I use the agent for to interact with an external or internal one. How much important to keep things simple, transparent, and explainable, and again, from a legal client perspective aspect.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously really important. It is quite hard to do in many ways. Um, so, for example, I guess like in your example, you have two agents that communicate to each other, right? And
Yeah.
information is being passed. There are some interesting implications here. So, for example, making sure that the information the agents pass to one another is actually the one they're allowed to pass, not at the level of just like some region has GDPR and some doesn't, but also at the level of, especially in the legal space, having very confidential information that you must preserve. So that is one of the main things that we are working on, is trying to guarantee to our customers that information doesn't get used in a way that they are not aware of. So it's about, education that, if we have two agents in our system that talk to each other, like we do in chat, those agents both have access to your contract information. Is that okay? It's about making sure that people are on a journey with you. At the moment, there's nothing that's, crazy controversial, but I can foresee a world in which agents are going to have significantly more autonomy. So, for instance, are you happy if an agent files something on your behalf to use your name and details and pass it to the other agent that receives it? It's all about making sure that this kind of information gets agreed upon beforehand, and that the people who build the technology can actually ensure to some extent that its information doesn't leak. And it is a very difficult problem.
Right. Now, as an expert in AI, Karina, and beside what you're doing with Robin today, what are like some of the things that you're really excited about that are happening in the domain currently?
Yeah, I'm a very big fan of personalization. And I think people hear me talk about this constantly at work as well. I think it has a really important space in place in the legal AI space as well. And I think we haven't quite seen that emerging yet, but there are a lot of really cool initiatives right now around personalization, about making sure that the right memory is captured by the agent, such that if your preference changes, the agent is aware of that. And that's like a really powerful capability that is emerging. That's like a very big area of interest for me. Other things are about making sure that the information that we process, that say for instance from like complex documents, flows, the world like videos, is actually correctly represented. And how can you have a verification step that ensures that basically the models actually see what you intend them to see? um,
Hmm.
it's it's um, it's a bit of an unloved area, I would say, because it's usually very engineering heavy, and people are like, oh, we can just shove it into an LLM, but that's not quite true. Like we
Hmm.
see even in the legal context that contracts are so badly processed usually, and that's because it's kind of hitting a ceiling. And if your data input data is bad, you have no chance of success really. So let's make sure that we solve the ugly, unloved problem first before we do anything else. And then a lot of things that are very cool are, for instance, things that can be transferred from a lot of the gaming research that has been happening recently, where you have these agents that co-play with your game, and we're seeing quite a lot of success. And it's the same kind of technology that's happening in self-driving cars to some extent, where there's this kind of like level of autonomy in terms of what the agent can do and how he can do it based on a lot of visual data they can see. I think a lot of this is really interesting in other spaces as well, like for instance, legal, because it's a basically very high volume of data. Maybe it's data in a different form, but the way you can create agents that are basically autonomous in deciding what is a relevant task is a really interesting space, and I think it's quite understudied at the moment.
All like exciting space, I would say. As we are almost close to the end, Karina, maybe final things you want to share with uh, other leaders, your peers, CTOs, or whatever their title might be, evaluating AI partners. If you want to give them like one piece of advice, what that would be.
I would say to think of what you're looking for in the partnership to make sure that adoption can be successful. Basically, being mindful early before you engage in the wrong process, I think will basically save everyone a lot of time and resource.
Great. Finally, Karina, where people can find more about Roman AI and, of course, like get in touch.
On our website, you can find a lot of information. We also have quite a lot of blog posts, and we're quite active on social media. So yeah, please reach out. We are always keen to hear from you.
And you are on LinkedIn, I believe, also, right?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. Well, Karina, it was a very engaging discussion. As I said, we didn't discuss legal tech much. I think I did one episode, maybe 1.5 years, if not more, ago. So it was good refresher for us. What's new also in this domain? What are the use cases? So thank you very much for your time today. And this is how I end my episode. This is for the audience. If you just discovered us by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed the discussion today. If you did, please give me a favor, subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues. We are available on all podcasting platforms and on YouTube. And if you are one of the people who are loyal, who keep sending messages to me, thank you very much for the support. I really appreciate it. And as I say, always stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Hit that subscribe button. Share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs.